Hey guys, Loot Wizard here with another video on Gems of War, and in this one I'm going to be going over my top 10 Underworld legendary troops. So this is my opinion. Some of you may rank these differently than me, and there might be a legendary troop that I left out that maybe you like better than these, but this is my top 10, so let's get right into it. For number 10, it is the Sledgepaw troop. This is a legendary troop for the Dark Pits faction in the Underworld. And I like it because, for a couple of reasons. One, it's a mana generator. It will destroy a 5x5 block of gems, and destroying gems is as if you match them. So that's better than exploding them. It will curse, bleed, and stun the first enemy. And curse and stun are great because, curse, for example, if an enemy is cursed and it's normally immune to devour, you'll be able to devour it if it is cursed. Stun is great because those traits can be really annoying sometimes, especially with troops like Gorgatha, where it has a 75% damage reduction to skulls. Now, if it's stunned, it will make those traits void until it can recover from it, which means you're going to be doing the 100% skull damage as long as it's stunned. So Sledgepaw is really great for that. And two things here as well. Wildfolk and Giant is the type of troop that it is. So you can start it with 50% mana, either with King Salness, which is a legendary troop for the Wildfolk, or if you have the Titan class fully traded, you will make Giants start with 50% mana. So that cuts this 13 down to about 6 mana that you will need to get this thing powered up right away. So that's a really fast start. And so that's great. Now, in its traits, it does have a little bit of damage reduction from skulls, 25%, and then it will recover 6 life at the start of each turn. So it is a defender type troop, but also a mana generator. And it does that curse and that stun to the first enemy, which I really like. So this is one of those troops that, like, you know, you can get the mana going pretty quick for your team. And now, another thing here is for every troop here that I show, I will be showing on the side 1 or 2 teams that I have that I like using with the troop that I'm showing. So for the Sledgepaw, and this is a team that I have used recently that I did like: Sledgepaw, Queen Beatrix, Life and Death, and King Salness. And all of this is going to start with 50% mana, and so the mana gets going pretty quick. So moving on to number 9. We have the Elder Father. This is a Primal Rift faction legendary troop. Now, I did want to rank this one higher, and I just couldn't find enough of other troops that make this one really great. So it transforms red gems to purple and yellow to skulls, and then it will summon 1 or 2 types of troops if there's an empty spot on your team. And so this is one of those legendary troops that will convert a color of gems to skulls. So, you know, it's like you got, what is it, Divine Ishbala, and you got Keelan, and you got quite a few of these now. But unlike Keelan and Divine Ishbala, there isn't another troop that goes really, really well with Elder Father, at least that I haven't discovered one yet. The best one that I could find was Sir Quentin Hadley, which is another one of these troops that converts gems into skulls. So those two seem to go okay together. Not great, but they're okay. This team right here was working pretty good for me in PvP for several matches that I tried. So if you want to test it out, there you go. There's that team. So now for its traits, it does entangle a random enemy when you match purple gems, and it does reduce damage from spells by 25%. So it's yeah, it's not a bad troop. That's why it's number 9, because there are legendary troops that I left off this list. Anyway, if you guys know of a combination with Elder Father that I don't know, if you go ahead and post that in the comment section below, I would love to see it. But for now, this is going to be number 9 for me. Moving on to number 8, we have the King of Thieves. Now, this one, some of you might be a little bit surprised that this one is number 8 for me and not higher. But this troop, although it's really good, you need to use a gold type of team with it. Cedric is really important for this troop. What it does is it will deal damage to an enemy, and then it gains 3 to all skills boosted by gold. So if you have your gold up there at a maximum of like 200, it's going to gain about 40 to all of its skills, meaning all of its magic, its attack, its armor, and its life are all going to get boosted by like 40 every time you cast it, as long as you have that maximum gold. How you get them 200 gold is you need Cedric in your team. So this team over here is the one that I really like to use with the King of Thieves, and it's pretty much stuck to that team. Now you could use Egg Thief in there instead of Bronze Lock Pistol and try to, still do something with it, but I haven't really found any better combination with the King of Thieves than this one right here, this team. So once Greed dies, then King of Thieves should have its skills, pretty high, and you can do quite a bit of skull damage with it as well as spell damage. But, for now, it's number 8. Number 7, we have the Silent Sentinel from the Hall of Guardians. This is a pretty good legendary troop. It's very good for defending, and it does generate some mana. It will explode a column, it'll give life to itself, and then it will silence. If there are any enemies silenced, it will enchant all other allies. Also, it has a lot of damage mitigation in its traits by spells 25%, skulls 50%, and then it will inflict silence on any enemy that does skull damage to it. So a lot of times, there'll be an enemy at the top, and not all heroes are immune to silence. There's only like two, maybe 3 classes that I can remember right now that are immune to silence. So most of them are not immune to a silence. And so most of the time the hero is in that first spot, and this troop will silence them, which is great. It'll shut them down. And then you'll be able to enchant all of your other allies. So it's going to generate some mana. So over here, the Silent Sentinel, this one I've showed off before, is an all-blue team with the Silent Sentinel, which I've used Blue Day on Guild Wars with some pretty good success throughout the past months. So there's that team, and then there's another team over here that I threw together real quick that I was using in PvP, which was pretty fun. Silent Sentinel at the top, Mountain Crusher, Satyr Musician. Satyr Musician is going to do silence to the first 2 enemies, so even if you don't get a skull poke with the Silent Sentinel, or the enemy doesn't get a skull poke where it can get silenced there, you have Satyr Musician here to silence. And then, of course, Tina down here is going to do a lot of damage with Mountain Crusher is going to fill that up, or you can enchant it with the Silent Sentinel. So I don't know. There's a lot of different combinations that you can use with the Silent Sentinel. It's pretty versatile. Put it in that top spot, and it's definitely one of those legendary troops that you do want to have fully traded because there's a lot of benefit with the damage reduction there from spells and skulls, and then silence is great. So definitely try to fully trade this one if you can. But yeah, I really like this troop. It's number 7. Alright, moving on to our number 6 spot is Raza. Raza is a legendary troop from Raza's lair in the Underworld. And this troop, I didn't really, give it much thought at first for like the first month or so that it came out. I was like, what? Probably not going to use this one. And then it turns out I've been using it in a lot of teams recently, and it's actually just really fun to use because to really get the most out of this troop, you do need to fully trade it because it will create a Madness Storm at the start of every turn, which is going to be a blue and purple storm at the same time. So you're going to have lots of blue and purple gems coming down on the board, and that can make any team that you put together that has a combination of blue and purple troops with this troop at the bottom, it'll just make it so much better. So this is a great troop, more of passive because even though it has a possibility of doing damage to all enemies, then it jumbles the board, or it gains an extra turn, or it explodes gems. There's like 4 different things I think that it can do. So sometimes you can cast it, you might get something out of it, but the main reason that I use it is for the Madness Storm. And there are 2 other troops that you can get to get a purple or a blue storm. For the purple storm, it would be Umberwolf, which I believe is a legendary card, but it's not from the Underworld. And then there's Skady, which is a mythic troop, which gives you a blue storm. So those are the other two options, but they might be harder to get than this one. This one you can get in the Underworld, and you might be able to get this before you get the other ones. All right, so that's number 6, and the two teams that you can use this troop in many different teams. Very versatile, but these two teams here I really do like a lot. This one, Reflection of Good at the top, Aquaticus, Leprechaun. You got a lot of blue going on and purple there. And then with Dawnbringer over here, we have Treachery, Guardian Troop for the Assassin, Naga class type here. Dawnbringer, Leprechaun, that's pretty good there too. Pretty fun. So yeah, those are a couple of teams you can use with this troop. And now we're moving on to the top 5. So number 5 is Chief Dargan. Yeah, Chief Dargan I think is pretty darn good. The reason why is because it will give attack to all allies below it. It explodes a row, so it's giving you some mana generation as well as just increasing so much attack. And it does reduce damage from skulls by 50% if you do trade it down to the middle one here. And it's a low mana cost, only 13. Now, there is currently no way to get it to start with 50% mana, but that's fine because it's a pretty low mana cost. But yeah, it is considered a Naga and a monster. It's from the Fang Moor Underworld faction. So if I forget to mention the faction of these troops, you can pause the video and just read. It'll say right here, the first name underneath the name of the troop is the faction that it's for, where you can get it. So, but yeah, this troop, I really do like it, given all that attack. And there's two teams here that I really do like to use with it. Chief Dargan on this one, all monster team of the monster class. I'm using Bog Strider as another means of generating mana for the rest of those. Doomed Club there, Arachne and Weaver. But yeah, and then Chief Dargan's going to give attack to all these guys. And then over here on the right, I have another team that centers around High King Iron Gut. And as you guys know, if you get your attack on the Iron Gut to 100, it'll give you a 100% chance to devour an enemy troop, as long as it's not immune to devour. So Chief Dargan, after you cast it like 2 times, you probably, around 2, maybe 3, it depends on where your magic is. But 2 to 3 casts of Chief Dargan, and you should have the King Iron Gut up to 100 attack. And then, of course, Mountain Crusher's in here to generate mana for everything, including the King Iron Gut. But, yeah, that's kind of a Chief Dargan Iron Gut team there. So, yeah, I think this comes in at the number 5 spot for me because it's really useful, especially with the King Iron Gut. Now, moving on to number 4, we have Luna from the Warrens faction. And Luna is kind of like a legendary version of the Possessed King in some ways. The Possessed King, a lot of people use it mainly for its last trait, which will explode 2 random gems every time you have a 4 or 5 match. Now, the Luna troop here will explode a random gem when matching yellow gems. So it's not on a 4 or 5 match, it is a specific color of gems, but that little bit of explosion can really make the board a little bit better for you, and you can get more mana from that. It is a Wild Folk troop, so you can get it to start with 50% mana with the legendary Wild Folk troop, King Selness there. Now, Luna is pretty good. It does damage to all enemies, and then it will either inflict 1 to 2 status effects on enemies or 1 to 2 status effects on allies. So sometimes you can cast it and it'll barrier all of your allies or enchant them or bless them, or you can cast it and it will put negative status effects, like it'll silence all the enemies, or it'll entangle all the enemies. It'll do things like that. So pretty good legendary troop. I do like it quite a bit, although I don't use it quite as often as I probably should in some of my teams. But yeah, it's a pretty good troop, and that's why it's number 4, because even if you're just going to put it in your team for getting that extra explosion on those yellow gems, that's kind of nice. Now, over here, I have 2 different teams, left and right, that you can use. The Wild Folk team over here, we have a Wild Folk weapon here that generates mana that's green and yellow mana for Wild Queen and Luna. And Wild Queen is a really great one there, too, but Luna really makes that team all that much better. Over here on the right side, we're using the Stormcaller class, which gives us a Light Storm every turn. So this is not based around Wild Folk, even though I have 2 Wild Folk troops in here, TNE and Luna. But Gorgotha is going to give you lots of explosions for mana generation. And then, of course, when you have that Storm going, you're going to get, with Luna, remember, every time you match a yellow gem, you're going to get an explosion. So with the Stormcaller class, with that Light Storm every turn, you're going to get plenty of little explosions from Luna. Having that storm going. So that's number 4 for me. Now on to the top 3. Number 3 is Queen Beatrix. Queen Beatrix is a pretty darn good legendary troop. It creates 9 green and brown gems, and it deals, for me, it deals 72 true damage. Now that depends on your current magic. But then there are independent 40% chances to gain an extra turn or half its mana back. So there's a 40% chance that it gets an extra turn, a 40% chance that it gains gains half its mana back. Now I wish it was more of like 60% chances. Would make it a little better, because this troop, although it's really good, it falls short of. You know, there's just sometimes you cast it and it doesn't gain half its mana back, and it doesn't get an extra turn, and it just and then no gems connect on the board either to give you an extra turn, and then you end up giving the enemy an extra turn. So I don't know. I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the Queen Beatrix, because I really do love it in a lot of teams, but then there's times where its ability can backfire on you in some sense. Now, its traits, or its last trait, really, I should say, is the one that's really amazing, too, is it will cleanse all allies on a 4 or 5 gem match. And that alone is almost worth putting it in a team, because if your top troop gets entangled, like if back when I was showing those teams with Chief Dargan, and you're increasing all the attack, well, attack doesn't mean anything if you're getting entangled. But if you have a troop like Queen Beatrix in your team, you can get cleansed every single time you get a 4 or 5 gem match. So that's really good. And it is Wild Folk, so you can get it to start with 50% mana if you include it in a Wild Folk team. So that's another thing to think about. And I don't think I mentioned it is from the Deep Hive Underworld faction. Now, over to the left, I have a team here, a Mountain Crusher, 2 Queen Beatrix troops, and then a Force Troll at the bottom. You could reverse Force Troll and Mountain Crusher, or you could replace Mountain Crusher with a different weapon and put Force Troll up at the top. There's different ways that you can do a double Queen Beatrix team. This is just one that I've used recently and liked. And then over here on the right side, this seems to be a pretty meta team for Queen Beatrix, and in the PvP. You have the Emerald tier weapon, Queen Beatrix, and Mistralis, Mercy, and that seems to be a pretty powerful team with Queen Beatrix as well. So that's my number 3. Now moving on to number 2, we have the Queen Mirage, or the Mirage Queen. This troop is from the Sunken Fleet, faction down in the Underworld. It is considered an elemental troop, and this is number 2 for a couple of reasons. 1, it curses all enemies. 2, it converts all green gems to Doom Skulls, not just skulls, to Doom Skulls, which do more damage than regular skulls. And then when fully traded, it will cause elementals to start with 50% mana. This is great. So I love this troop for a bunch of different reasons. Cursing all enemies is great. Creating those Doom Skulls is great. So over here, and since it is an elemental itself, I should say that it will cause itself to start with 50% mana. So the 15 mana cost there gets cut down in half immediately, because it's an elemental. It's going to make itself start with 50% mana. So you only need about 7 or 8 mana there to get that started. But it's only really, you only want to cast this weapon if you want to curse, or if you have green gems matched up enough with skulls. So I have a team over here to the left. I like this team a lot. Forest Troll at the top, King Gob Trifle, Mirage Queen, and then Doomed Glaive down at the bottom. You know, the Forest Troll will create your green, which will fill up Gob Trifle and Doomed Glaive. And then you have the Mirage Queen here. Once that gets full, you will be able to create all those Doom Skulls. And you're going to have a lot of green on the board from Forest Troll and King Gob Trifle Doomed Glaive will convert brown gems to Doom Skulls, and you're going to have brown on the board from the King Gob Trifle. So that team is pretty strong right there, and the Mirage Queen, really nice. Now, over on the right side, we have another team with the Mirage Queen, which is the Essence of Evil weapon at the top, the Wild Queen, Mirage Queen, and Leprechaun. Leprechaun's going to be your mana generator to get everything started just right at the beginning. And then you're going to have the Wild Queen is going to be creating skulls, a mix of 22 skulls and green gems. So that's perfect for the Mirage Queen. There's a lot of lineup potential with that. So that's a really good team there as well. Now, on to number 1. And you guys already know what it is. It's the King Gob Trifle. Yeah. I mean, he's the king, right? So everybody uses this, and I don't think anyone's gonna say no, the King Gob Trifle's not number 1 legendary in the Underworld. The only one that could compete with it is probably the Mirage Queen, which that's why it's my number 2. Well, I guess the Queen Beatrix could compete with it, but it's not as good, so that's why it's number 3 for me. But yeah, what can be said about the king here? It's from the Amanithrox faction in the Underworld. It is an elemental, so if you do include the Mirage Queen with the King Gob Trifle, you can make it start with half mana. You can cut that 17 right in half. Now, it will do damage to all enemies. It creates a mix of 16 green and brown gems, but that's boosted by poisoned and diseased enemies, and it has a guaranteed extra turn. While, like the Queen Beatrix troop only had a 40% chance to gain an extra turn, this has a 100% chance to gain an extra turn, and that's why I think it's better. Now, it will disease if you have all of the traits unlocked. The final one, it will disease a random enemy when you match 4 or more gems, and you know, that's really great because the more enemies you have diseased, you're going to create more gems with it. So a lot of good looping potential with this troop. And if you look over here, I have a pretty classic team with the Thief and all the Goblins. So the Thief class is a Goblin, and with that weapon here, Norbert's Turnip, that's going to generate mana for the rest of these, and this is a pretty good looping team right here. If you don't have Toad Squeezer, you can throw in the No Bend Brothers. That works really good down there as well. Over on the right side, this is a pretty common team now. Forest Troll, 2 Gob Trifles, and then you have Essence of Evil. And that works pretty good, too. So, yeah, guys, that is my number 1 for the Underworld Legendary Troops. And that is the end of my top 10 Legendary Troops from the Underworld. So, yeah, thanks for watching, guys, and I would love to hear what you think in the comment section below. Is there other troops? You know, is there a legendary troop down there in the Underworld that you would put in here besides some of the ones I put into a top 10? You know, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching as always, and I'll catch you on the next video. Later.